phone call almost cost him his life.
Have you found it?
Right there, that's his wife, that's him right there. Frantically, Mrs. Brinkley began pounding away on her husband's chest. I was out for a few minutes, and she saved my life, Danny said, in the story.
So who saved Daniel's life?
His wife, according to what he said.
Not the paramedic or the morgue attendant?
No, he was conscious when he left the trailer.
This is Dr. Eves, Daniel's doctor. He says he was with Daniel within an hour of him being struck by lightning, and he seemed fine.
When I saw him, he was completely lucid, and of course, since then, I've heard other stories that I read in the paper about him being pronounced dead, and they'd pulled a sheet over him. No, that's not true.
Did he mention anything to you about going into a light and seeing a cathedral and meeting God?
The only time I knew about that was when I read about it in the newspaper later. A book he wrote, he wrote a book, you know. And he sold right good been down locally, I think, but I didn't buy one. I didn't get to read about it.
It was 35 weeks on the New York Times bestsellers list.
You kidding?
Nope.
Wow. Man.
This is Carl's newspaper report. Daniel hasn't seen it since 1975.
Why were you feeling bad about showing me this? I think this is wonderful.
Well, because it says that you only died for a few minutes, and it was your wife who revived you before you went in the ambulance.
I can answer that easy. Well, here's the story. She was pounding on my chest when I was floating above. And this was probably 10 to 12 minutes into me floating around. And when she pounded on my chest, she brought me back. And all of a sudden I was back into that burning body. And then I was back out of it again.
Daniel maintains that he did wake up in the morgue after having a vivid near-death experience, and the reason why he didn't tell Carl or Dr. Eves is because he was young and embarrassed about admitting such an emotional thing.
I was not going to start ranting and raving about a near-death experience in that hospital, fighting for my life. And I just don't understand why you were so upset about it.
Well, I sort of felt that it contradicted your...
No, it doesn't at all. It doesn't at all. You don't tell people the whole world.
We'll never know exactly what happened to Daniel when he died, but I do think he makes death seem too exciting. And I wonder if George should be more dispassionate about the afterlife, given the nature of his job.
That which is emptiness form, the same is true of feelings, perceptions, impulses, consciousness, shari puja.
Today, George and his partner Thomas are driving to Baltimore to help Pam commit suicide. This is the Buddhist chant, the Heart Sutra. It's what Pam has said she wants George to recite at the moment of her death.
The main thing at the end is I want to hear the Heart Sutra read.
Okay. Oh, I got the Heart Sutra. Yeah, I can do the Heart Sutra.
I got that. I got it too.
Now I've spent a few years with George, I'm beginning to wonder if he's too in love with death and was too one-sided when he counselled Pam.
The one thing I can say is that from the reading that I have done of people who have ended their lives intentionally, there is no record of anything bad happening to any of them. There's just no record of it. So I tend to think that the people I've helped are safe. If they weren't going to be safe, I wouldn't be sitting here.
It's a 6-hour drive to Baltimore and night-time when they finally arrive and call Pam to tell her they've made it and to make sure she's alone in the house and still on for killing herself.
Hello, this is George calling. How are you? Okay, great.
I'm always careful, and I always work quietly, like the Lone Ranger. I do so generally at night, and the deaths are, for the most part, it appears like she just died in her sleep.
Thomas is with me. We'll see you then.
So will you prop a newspaper up on somebody's lap, or will you do...
oh, I shouldn't say this, but this is a very common, I mean, in bed they may be reading like this, or sitting in a chair and I put a book or a magazine in their hand and it just looks like they were there and expired. Okay? Great. Sure. Bye-bye. So what's the story? Well, I got the instructions again, but it's a little unnerving with all of this traffic. I could just barely hear her.
How did she sound?
Very chipper. Very chipper.
There was a time when George would always take a large gas-filled inflatable alligator with him to his exits. He'd carry it under his arm in case the police stopped him.
And I could always say I was there to do a party, a pastoral party for, this person who was ill. And I felt conspicuous walking. I thought, part of the thing is I want to not be noticed when I go in. But
you don't want a big stuffed alligator.
But if I'm carrying this stuffed alligator, people are going to notice it. So I thought it was just drawing attention to myself, and I started leaving the alligator at home.
And of course, the people that you're assisting don't really want you to turn up with a big stuffed alligator.
No, I don't think they really did either, So then they'd have to explain it to them. Why do you have this big stuffed alligator? Well, it's just in case it just wasn't a good idea. I'm going to turn around the car so that when we leave, it can be an unpretentious getaway. I guess we're just going to do our best. Okay. I wouldn't want you to come any farther than this, if it's all right.
An hour later, and George and Thomas suddenly dash out of Pam's house in a great panic.
She just dropped this bomb. First, she wasn't falling asleep, and she said something about, and then she starts eating food. Just pretending like she has all day and all night. And then she dropped this bomb about this woman coming home at 11:30. And I said, well, listen, I can't be here. I'm sorry.
Is she alive or dead?
Oh, she's alive. She's sitting eating a bagel with cream cheese.
We regroup at a motel down the road.
This was not a successful event. We began chanting the Heart Sutra, which we did for about half an hour, and she got up and she said she wanted to have a bagel, and so she got up and went in and proceeded to toast a bagel for herself and put cream cheese on it, and then sat there munching very slowly on the bagel, and then proceeded to tell us that this woman who lives in the same house with her was expected to might return about 11:30. Well, it was then 11:15. And she's still munching on the bagel. I said, I can't stay here. I cannot stay. So I will call you at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which is the time that this roommate again goes back to work. Because I will not leave until I'm finished here, but I simply can't stay here and run the risk of all of this audience coming in.
It does sound like she was undecided.
No, she was very much decided, very much decided.